and welcome to the Halloween edition of Today with Dr. Wendy. So maybe it's just a coincidence, maybe we're just lucky, but on this show, my co-host Larry Dersham and I have been privileged to actually have many shows this year on holidays. 4th of July, we're on the air. Memorial Day weekend, we're on the air. Halloween, we are on the air. So it is just great, and I actually got to wear my Comic-Con Halloween costume today because, of course, as we all know, Comic-Con didn't happen, but that's okay. I'll save it for next year. So one of the things we want to start with, as you might imagine on a night like tonight, is please be careful where you go, what you say, what you do, what you eat. Boy, let's just start with that. The neighborhoods you go to, every single thing about Halloween that we normally talk about has just been complicated by the virus. So just make sure you and your children are safe, and our prayers are with you and your safety tonight. But I would be remiss not to have a couple of suggestions for what you might do if you're not going out, if you're going to stay #safe at home. The Foley Food and Wine Society came out with some candy and wine pairings. Now, who doesn't like something like this? Let me give you a couple of them very quickly. So candy corn, you either love them or you hate them. The price is certainly right. Many of us love them. In fact, I've seen some Halloween recipes where they are mixing them in with everything from hamburgers to chicken wings and everything in between. But here's a pairing for you by the Foley Food and Wine Society. Candy, corn, and Chardonnay. Now, why? Why do these two things go together? Well, they explain. Candy corn is a sweet, buttery tasting candy with a waxy texture. Lovely. Pairing it with a buttery Chardonnay will complement the candy nicely, they explain, without becoming too overpowering. Now, what do you suppose Reese's peanut butter cups go with? That's right, you may have guessed this, it goes with Merlot. Now, Reese's peanut butter cups, in case you don't follow these candy polls the same way that I do, this has been voted the most popular candy in the nation on a bipartisan basis. We can all get behind this. So why do you pair it with Merlot? Well, according to the same website, Reese's is a blend of sweet and salty perfection. Boy, who wouldn't disagree with that? Kind of a savory type of an atmosphere here. Sugar from the chocolate, salty from the peanut butter, and Merlot with complementary aromas such as cherry and chocolate pairs wonderfully. Now, I'm not going to go any further with this except to say that gummy worms pairs nicely with rosé. So try some of this stuff out. Your kids are going to bring home lots of candy. Maybe you can talk them into giving or sharing some with mom and dad. So I told you about the candy poll. Let's talk about the presidential election poll, because you may remember that is probably the biggest thing of the decade going on this year, and it happens to be coming up Tuesday. So this is the Halloween edition. It's also the presidential election edition. This weekend, both candidates are in a full court press. Now, had this show been last week as it was, but what we would have said last week about the election had it been coming up on Tuesday is that Joe Biden is running out the clock. The president is in a full court press, but now we have both candidates on the court. They are both pounding the pavement. Why? Because it's looking like it may be more of a photo finish than Joe Biden may have thought a week ago. Both candidates are crisscrossing the states. Both just have a lot of energy. Joe Biden says he's working a 12-hour day. I don't know if that's true, but I'm sure that he should be working a 12-hour day, and if he is, more power to him. So both of these candidates are now really pulling out all the stops right up at the end. One of the things that has also characterized this weekend is it's no longer a marathon versus a sprint. Our president, of course, has been the sprinter for the past 4 years. Both of them are now working very, very hard. But is it really going to make a difference? Well, I suppose, and Larry, you're probably going to tell me I'm right about this, I suppose that depends on whether or not people who have not yet voted decide with a passion to fulfill their civic duty and get out there and cast their ballot.
Right. This is Halloween Day, October 31st, and very unusually, the polls are open. They are open today through November 3rd. So that's 4 days, folks, that you have to get out and vote. If you haven't already mailed in your ballot or taken it to one of the drop-off locations, the polls are literally open today, and I understand until 5 o'clock, but the hours change on Sunday and then on Monday and Tuesday. So we're actually rolling through the election right now. And I have my own opinions here that I wanted to briefly get out because I have my opinions that don't reflect the station or even my wonderful co-host Wendy Patrick necessarily. But I am advocating that we vote for President Trump. He's working so hard. He's not a perfect person. Neither am I, and neither are you in the listening audience, I don't think. And I think we all need to kind of, gently I'll say this, to get over that fact. We are blessed to be citizens of the greatest nation on earth. And our ancestors came here at tremendous risk to their life and limb to establish this wonderful free nation based on Judeo-Christian values, and many died in the process. And I'm not asking you to risk your life, folks, just to vote.
You know, when it comes to who you're going to vote for, I know that a lot of people have set out for a while, probably thinking they weren't going to vote. And actually, last Tuesday, the top trending Google search was, "Can I change my vote?" Now, we don't live in a state where you can do that, but it reflects the reality that now, unlike what the president said, you can't do that in most states, but there are a few states that if you voted, you can change it, but not if you voted in person. Dead in the water, game over. But if you sent in a mail-in ballot or voted absentee, in some states you had a period of time in which you could invalidate that and then substitute an in-person vote usually, or in a couple of states, even a ballot vote. But here's the problem we're facing now is the undecideds may still remain undecideds. Now, maybe they're doing other things with their children today, but tomorrow's a new day. And like you said, today, Halloween, the voting started here in San Diego. So it is the time to actually consider getting educated, learning all you can because knowledge is power, and then going out and casting a vote, right?
Absolutely. And I would just say, please don't vote for someone who just happens to have a D or an R next to their name on the ballot. You need to vote for candidates who will champion life, not death. Ones who advocate for freedom, not socialist totalitarianism. You need to support for office politicians who support traditional family values, not progressive left-wing candidates who tell us there are 100 different genders and encourage sexual anarchy. You need to vote for candidates who value freedom of speech, movement, association, and religion, not censorship, cancel culture, and an exaggerated lockdowns that will lead to a great reset into a new world order. And so I support, we want to support what Reverend Martin Luther King said, his vision of a colorblind society, not a Black Lives Matter vision of revenge, destruction, and revolution, in my opinion. And so that's what I encourage people, vote your values. And I know you all have grown up with values, and that is so important. It doesn't matter what party they're from, what are their values?
Well, it's interesting you bring up those values because a lot of what we've seen this election cycle is we learned that words matter. We learned that terminology sometimes stereotypes different groups. And one of the most painful lessons, very emotional, I think we've all learned is groups don't necessarily stand for what they've been hijacked to mean. You know, there are many groups that started out peacefully and only want peace, only want to exercise their peaceful First Amendment rights to discuss the things that matter to them. And then you have other naysayers coming in and hijacking movements and looting and pillaging and burning buildings. And, everybody, I think, recognizes that, but it's very important when it comes to voting that we do exactly that. Look at your kitchen table issues, talk about it with your family, look at your ballot, read about the things you need to read about. I don't know if everybody listening watched the debate now a couple of weeks ago, but it was finally an opportunity, and I would say the winner of that debate was the American people, because both candidates actually had a chance to talk about their vision for the future. Now, I know there's criticism. They basically went at each other for some of the time, but one of the things you heard the president talking about, finally, was what he's done in the last 3 years. He talked about national security, becoming energy independent, and all the kinds of things that we care about job-wise, finances, getting back to work, and talking about opening the country safely, not opening the country and having this kind of a herd immunity that would take too many casualties, but opening the country safely. Larry, I think it's ironic that both candidates want that, but that we have this terrible rhetoric that almost attacks, like you said, the non-value lesser components of what makes them different, when both candidates are trying to say, we both want Americans to go back to work. We both want a cure to the virus. Although I do have to say, I kind of like the president's Operation Warp Speed. I mean, who doesn't like that? And that seems to be really the tact he's taken with a lot of what he's accomplished over the last 3.5 years.
Really, that's true. And I don't normally do this, but I just discovered a YouTube video yesterday. I looked it up, and I'm asking everybody to check this out. It has some really rough language in it, but it's by Michael Moore, somebody I rarely, if ever, agree with. But if you just go to YouTube and in YouTube search for Michael Moore, Trump 2016, it's what Michael Moore talked about, felt about Trump just before the 2016 election. And I'm just asking people to do that. It was just amazing. I couldn't believe it. And that is the essence of who Trump is, if you'd watch that video.
Hey, Larry, before we run out of time, tell us about the non-essential peaceful protest you have organized.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're having a non-essential peaceful protest down at Waterfront Park, 1600 Pacific Highway on Sunday, November 1st from 12 noon to 1:30 p.m. And it's going to be amazing. We're going to ask the government, state and local, to lift the restrictions and have full open places of services for places of worship, open the small businesses, open the schools. We're going to have an amazing list of speakers already, and it will be covered by national television. And I've already talked to the people about that. So it's going to be a cool, free event. If you have some time, 12 noon Sunday. And remember, we're changing our clock. We're changing our clocks Saturday night or Sunday mornings. So
Isn't
it'll be a time
it
change.
Convenient that because many of our listeners might be up late on Halloween, that we actually get an extra hour of sleep? That is probably the most convenient time change I can remember in years. I don't know, maybe I just keep forgetting, but that is pretty cool. So please, everybody, remember that. Please stay with us over the break because we have a very interesting guest who's going to join us tonight that's going to talk about something incredibly relevant going on this fall. Kids going back to school. She's going to talk about what are they really learning and how that very much ties in, believe it or not, to presidential politics. So a little bit of a segue before we completely turn from polls to poultry. We're going to talk about education in there in the middle of it. So stick with us. You are listening to the Halloween edition of Today with Dr. Wendy. Back in a flash. And welcome back to the Halloween edition of Today with Dr. Wendy. Well, we started out with a poll, but it turns out there is more that both partisan parties, let's say Democrats and Republicans, there is more agreement than just candy. There's also an agreement that curriculum matters as well. The question is, what kind of curriculum? And yes, I'm talking about back to school. So all parents love their children and want them to grow up to be healthy, happy, responsible adults. We can all agree on that. One of the other things we can agree on is that the school, in many cases, especially the public school system, has some control over what the children are learning. And parents want to be very involved in that, and many of them are. They want to make sure they're learning age-appropriate curriculum that is going to benefit the kids, not going to lead them astray, is not going to be too much, too early, or too young, or that it's not going to push any kind of an ideological agenda. So many parents have agreement that we care about that. But sometimes there have been cases where parents have been shocked and amazed to learn what, in fact, the kids actually were learning. We have a special guest tonight that actually has some expertise in that area and has done some research to find out, well, in some cases, what are the kids learning in school, and do parents actually know? Larry, I hear we have somebody very special and very knowledgeable about this particular topic. Who's on the line?
Yes, Wendy, I'd like to welcome to the show Rebecca Friedrichs. Rebecca is the founder of the nonprofit organization For Kids and Country and the Adopt a Teacher Project. She's the author of the book Standing Up to Goliath, and a 28-year public school teacher who's leading the fight against the new radicalized sex ed that's being introduced into our public schools, grades K through 12 nationwide. So welcome to the program, Rebecca.
Wonderful to be here again. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Rebecca, you know, one of the things that we really care about on the show and we talk about a lot is the fact that there's There's more that unites us than divides us. We always hear ourselves saying that. And when it comes to kids, I mean, we care so deeply for our just adorable, precious young people in our families and in our communities, and keeping them safe and healthy, and really making sure they hear all the right things when they're growing up. But then we have this ideological divide sometimes that we find going on in the schools. And I mean, one of the things that our parents, as parents, we have to acknowledge is there comes a time in some school systems where they start talking about sex ed. Now, I don't know about the two of you. I don't know, Rebecca, if you're really 28 years old or not. I know Larry misspoke a little bit because you would have started when you were 2, but Larry and I are contemporaries, no doubt, in that we really didn't learn a whole lot about that in terms of graphic descriptions or any of that. And it seemed like it was when we were a little older. But I also know that times have changed, and that is not something that many parents are pleased about learning. So maybe because you seem to have an enormous amount of expertise in this area, what really has changed in terms of what our kids are learning? And the second thing I want you to address in talking about this is, are we talking about all schools, or are some schools more likely than others to introduce this type of curriculum earlier rather than later? No, I know. Larry corrected me, but I just wanted to give you you look like you're 28 years old. I've seen your picture. You're beautiful. Well, Larry, you had a couple of pointed questions along these lines that we wanted to make sure we got to because it's
Right.
such an important topic.
Yeah, I want to hear what you're going to say there, Rebecca, but just briefly, I guess my biggest question is why? Why are they doing this to the kids? Who's behind it? I mean, why do they want to sexualize kids at such an early age?
And is that their intention, Rebecca, or is it some benevolent intention gone wrong? Or gone rogue, I guess I should say. Both of those statements probably work.
Well, how early does this start, Rebecca? Does it go down to like preschool, kindergarten? When does it start?
Rebecca, Larry and I are both kind of just really scratching our heads on this one. The rationale behind some of this, and I mean, you don't need to be Christian to appreciate the danger of too much too soon, especially when it comes to ideas that many parents don't agree with. What is the rationale for starting this type of curriculum in preschool? And I guess in answering that, thank God we don't hear a lot of this from a lot of schools. Is it a certain group of schools? Is it certain kinds of schools where this is happening? Or is it just becoming more pervasive as time goes on? Well, we're gonna have to wrap it. So I'm gonna promote your book. You wrote a great book saying "Standing Up to Goliath" that we will feature on Twitter. That is just a terrific book. We're all about the silver lining here on Today with Dr. Wendy, and the fact that kids are learning at home, in many cases virtually, lets the parents actually have a little bit more oversight than they would have otherwise. And you talk about the good Lord doing everything for a reason. Perhaps this is one of those reasons, Rebecca and Larry, that actually parents now will have a little bit more buy-in and say in terms of what their kids are learning. And who knows whether or not the schools won't come around too in terms of also really having to face the music. This is a fascinating subject, and I just think it's fitting we talk about it on Halloween because it's all about the kids today and tonight. So thank you for joining us. God bless you, our listeners, and I want to say you are going to vote on Tuesday. Get out there and vote, if not beforehand. You are listening to Today with Dr. Wendy. I'm Wendy Patrick. Have a great week.